All politicians are forced to submit to historical necessity. Only virtuosos of them know how to put the laws of history at the service of themselves and their countries. But many nations believe in electoral magic. You can change your fate in an instant. The main thing is to choose the right person. This is how political technology projects are born, the results of which indeed are miracles, but not at all the miracles that voters hoped for. The events of the past few years have erased this from the memory of most people, but Zelensky became president of Ukraine as just the hero of the TV series and no one else. In fact, he came to the presidential office right from the screen. At that time, Ukrainians already knew 5 presidents, each of them left office with popularity that was close to zero. It would seem impossible to be disappointed again because you will simply not be fascinated anymore. However, an impeccable political technology campaign performed the miracle. Zelensky easily beat Poroshenko, who had endless administrative and financial resources. It's almost ridiculous, but the servant of the people for 4 years of rule 5 times congratulated his fellow citizens on New Year. First time it happened back in 2018, when for the sake of Zelensky's speech, the current head of state Poroshenko was moved in the air grid. Now a few minutes before the New Year, I promise you, and I will do it right away, dear Ukrainians, I promise you to become President of Ukraine, and I fulfill this promise right away. I am running for the President of Ukraine. Let's do this together. Happy New Year. At the time of his election, no one doubted that the new president was placed in his chair by oligarch Kolomoisky. Most likely this was the case. It is unlikely that even Zelensky himself thought otherwise. When he was an actor, he depended a little less than completely on the Jewish banderite, and Kolomoisky financed the servant of the people election campaign. But the oligarch took it wrong. The all-powerful Washington, London and Brussels quickly seized the levers of control, while Zelensky got out of one addiction to immediately fall into another. For the first 2 years of his term, the new Ukrainian leader seemed to be repeating the trajectory of the previous ones. Corruption scandals, all his officers were almost school friends and so on. He ridiculed something similar in the famous TV show.
It's like you get an injection right after the election. Once upon a time there lived an honest Ukrainian, a patriot. We elected him and he became a cunning, slippery, thieving yoke.
Do you think he became a cunning, slippery, thieving yoke? Or maybe he has always been such a yoke? And while Zelensky, with businessman Kolomoisky behind him, in theory could still start trading about peace, his new political partners did not allow him to even think about it. London and Washington did not allow it. The Minsk agreements and the Steinmeier formula suited United Europe, but not the people over the ocean and over the English Channel. This is where the first step towards war was taken. Minsk I and II, if anyone remembers, envisioned the peaceful reintegration of Donbass, without death and destruction, without oceans of hatred and blood. The only thing is that Luhansk and Donetsk should have been granted exemptions regarding the Russian language and self-government. The second step towards war was made in 2022. Then Kiev started talking about its own nuclear bomb. Well, if it doesn't have its own, it can get it from somebody else. If we were a nuclear power, everyone would talk to us differently, negotiate differently and so on. We could blackmail the whole world, they would give us money to service it. At the same time, in Kiev, all politicians spoke out loud about the Croatian Yugoslav civil war, Operation Storm. Then UN soldiers were pushed aside and captured Serbian Krajina in 4 days. When did international officials wondered, how could it be? There was nothing they could do about it. The only thing the peacekeepers could do was feeding 250,000 new Serb refugees in the camps. War is like tango, you need at least 2. If we put aside the mountains of dehumanizing propaganda that all the media are full of, it is obvious Zelensky is perhaps the main driver of the current conflict, a real man of war, even though not particularly independent. It was easy to prevent the fight simply by providing security guarantees to Russia, to discuss the non-expansion of NATO, the withdrawal of bases from the borders, to freeze defense spending and to abandon the military doctrine that calls Moscow the main enemy. And Kiev could at least slightly moderate the intensity of its belligerence. All they needed was some sign they did not want a conflict. But on the contrary, they really wanted it, at least by demonstrating this in every possible way, from Stoltenberg's mocking response to Russian demand to stop NATO expansion to Kiev's transfer of troops to Donbass. By the beginning of the conflict, the Ukrainian army had finally become an Anglo-American proxy. Western officers, if not making decisions, prepared them, and the armed forces command only approved them. They say that nobody wanted the World War I, but it couldn't help but start. It couldn't help but start here because everyone wanted the war. After the initial hot phase, negotiations began just 4 days later, first in Belarus and then in Turkey. Initially, Kiev demanded a return to the borders on the 24th of February. In April, to the 1991 borders. Contacts stopped in May. Kiev was probably looking for maps from the times of Petlura and the Central Rada with borders along the Caucasian range. But seriously. We also know from various reports and intelligence sources that indeed in 2022 in Istanbul, where close talks were held, there was in fact an agreement that, according to diplomatic gossip, Ukrainians did not sign at the behest of the United States. In any case, since May 2022, Zelensky has been the main and only protagonist of the bloodshed. He had every opportunity to stop the conflict, but did not do it. There is a lot of speculation about this. They say that the United States is in favor of freezing hostilities, while the UK and the country is in favor of a war for all the money. Zelensky allegedly has only one freedom, to choose senior partners, and prefers London. It is known that back in the pre-war period he met with British intelligence service. This probably has never been done by any head of state before him, since it is not up to presidents to visit foreign intelligence headquarters. We had a meeting at the MI6 office. Unfortunately, I can say that not all the information can be exposed to public. These are the state affairs. By the way, now as soon as Washington tried to seize control, Western newspapers immediately started talking about a truce, and they began to force Ukraine to negotiate. God knows what will come out of it. Zelensky is actually using his freedom to choose bullets and may hide back under the wing of the belligerent British. And the United States also has enough supporters of a big and long war. They can also prevail. If this happens, Zelensky will be an example of the most amazing transformation, to be elected as a peacemaker and end up as an institution of endless bloodletting, from a good clown to an evil one. We could follow this with interest, but alas, Zelensky is not a literary hero. His transformations result in the shedding of real blood and transformation of hundreds of thousands of living people into corpses. After all, at least since May last year, the conflict has been going on only because of his unwillingness to end it.